Hello, my name's Clare Murray. I'm Managing Partner of Specialist Partnership Employment and Regulatory firm CM Murray. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by my fabulous partner, David Fisher. Hello, David.
Hello.
And we are going to talk today about one of David's all-time favorite subjects, which is team moves and all things related to team moves. So you're going to be living your best life in this recording, right? Um, this is sort of looking at it from the perspective of sort of the team, people involved in the team, or someone that the business that's looking to acquire the team, and really looking at what happens in practice. And just to give people an overview who might be either considering it or might have taken some initial steps and now are starting to be a bit worried. So, David, what is a team move?
Basically, you've got two or more people, and it could sometimes be just a small group. We've dealt with cases where you get a couple of partners, say in a law firm, who decide they're going to make a move to another firm, with or without taking anyone with them. That would be classed as a team move for these purposes. To the other extreme, we see cases where you've got a much larger group of people, sometimes working in different offices in the same firm across different jurisdictions, who are either get together or being poached by another firm, and together, either simultaneously or around the same time, they make that move either over to a competitor or to set up a new business. So that's what we're looking at here, really, groups of people moving together or around the same time.
Assuming that you're not going off and living the dream and setting up your own business together, why would an acquiring business, why would they take a team typically rather than sort of just one key individual who they know in due course will be able to bring clients, people across because of the loyalty that exists? Why go large right at the start?
Yeah, I mean, there's an advantage in getting together a team early on when you can. You've got someone, let's say, someone senior who's got a lot of client connections, but they don't necessarily have all of the connections with the clients who they want to take along. They might have trusted colleagues who the client's happy to work with, and having that critical mass that you can lift and place into another business from the outset is going to give that new business a great advantage. Where it can do that, really sort of hit the ground running. There's less opportunity then for the old firm to try and shore up the client relationships. So when you've got that group of people who very possibly who've worked together for years, making that move, there's a big advantage for the new employer. And what we often see as well is you'll have a group of people who've already made a move. They've moved before as a team from one business into another, and then they go and do it again. And there's certainly a lot to be said for keeping a team like that together when they work so well and can really, as I say, just hit the ground running when they get to new employment.
And so there are real commercial advantages and also sort of friendship and relationship advantages as well. And I think people lead with that, but they don't necessarily understand the risks that come with it. And by the time they realize there are risks, they might be sort of knee deep in them already. So, I mean, I think we should just be very clear at this point. We're not recommending anyone to undertake a team move because of the risks attached, but we are recognizing that there is a commercial reality that they do happen. And it's just ensuring that people have a better understanding in advance so that they can be clear that there is risk and liability there. So would you mind just giving us just a bit of a flavour of the liabilities and potential litigation risks around a team move?
It's often said that it's almost impossible to conduct a team move without breaching some sort of obligation somewhere, which is why an awful lot of care has to be taken. And we often find that clients are surprised that they can't just make a decision as a group, talk to their colleagues, and make that joint decision to move. People think they're free to take up new roles elsewhere, so why can't we do this? But the fact is that Employees, partners, members of LLPs, going to have a range of obligations that they're subject to in their existing role. So this will be things like, due to good faith and fidelity, restrictions on being able to solicit their colleagues, actually plot together to make a move whilst they're still working for someone. Typically, in order to get a team move to happen, there's going to be some sort of discussion, some sort of cooperation between people, which is going to lead to a breach of one or more of those obligations.
What are the things in practice that people do at this stage that scupper them later on down the line?
Yeah,
like, I'm thinking, for example, WhatsApp. It's not our friend here, right?
So any communications between individuals that might be discovered later or have to be disclosed later that show that there's some sort of planning, whether it's one person approaching another or discussions around the possibility of making a move. We see very often at an early stage people jointly being in discussions with a with a new firm, where perhaps two or more partners are discussing this and are in conversations with a new firm about the potential to make a move. So it's quite obvious right from the outset that you've got a group of people up to something. I mean, I think it's fair to say that these days people are far more aware of the likelihood of being caught out by communicating on company systems. So we're far less likely to see people sending emails internally these days, or conducting things over company phones, those sorts of things. But there are still lots of signs of things that happen that are discovered somewhere down the line that will point to there having been some sort of discussion between people. And the likelihood of things happening that ought to be. It's quite rare, I'd say, to find a situation where everyone's squeaky clean, where no one's done anything that might not point to a breach here. So it's very difficult, as I say, to be able to do these things without slipping up somewhere along the line.
If you have, say, been a leader in organizing a team move, or a recruiting sergeant, as they might be described, so what would be, I guess, the key types of liability or relief, that they might face from the employer who they're leaving behind?
The obvious sort of thing that people like to be hit with once this sort of thing comes to light is a threat of injunctive proceedings. So the employer that's losing a team, on discovering what's been happening, is likely to threaten them with proceedings for an injunction to prevent them from making the move, or at least making the move at the time they want to. Because what the team is looking to do here is to land in at their new employer, hit the ground running, having effectively made that head start where they're not having to take steps to recruit new people. They've got the team there already together. The threat here from the employer that's losing them is to go for what we call a springboard injunction, potentially, which is to actually put a restraint on the team and the new employer to stop them working for a number of months potentially after they've left. So that's the thing that's the potentially the biggest threat and most sort of realistic sort of threat to them. There's also the potential threat of claims for damages or uncounted profits that's made from the move. There's also very possibly threat of action for disclosure of information. So it could be requiring people to provide disclosure of communications, for instance, so that if there's a suggestion that there's been confidential information passed or information misused, that individuals could be subject to action for delivery of information of that nature. In terms of legal proceedings, there's sort of quite a lot that could be threatened against individuals here. Where we see people, particularly in partnerships, who've got money in a business that's owed to them, then very often the threat of that being withheld is a very real issue.
At which point the partner says, "But it's not my money; it's the bank's money. I've borrowed. That capital is borrowed." And they go, "Well, no, it's still your money. You just owe that money to the bank. So unless there's an undertaking that the firm has to pay it back if you leave, that can be at risk." And all your other current and tax reserves. So I mean, someone like say a law firm partner who has participated in a team move, they can easily be on the wrong end of a million of their own money being withheld as the starting point, sort of tactically by the firm. And then,
and that's a really big issue, because obviously in that situation, the firm's got the money, and it's then up to the individual to try and get it back. And there could be quite big risks in that, particularly where there is something that they've done that they oughtn't to have done. And there'll be I think a concern there that if they get involved in legal proceedings to try and get their money back, that they might find themselves having to explain exactly what they've been doing in a situation where they really can't hide from it. So it could, not just be an issue about them not getting the money back, but lead to bigger problems. That's certainly something we see a lot. I think these days the withholding of money, and it's not just partners in firms, but if you've got individuals who think they're due deferred compensation or bonus payments and so on, then those are going to be the first things that are withheld, and it's certainly a good way of for the business that's losing them to put some pressure on them. And of course it's it's a big decision for them to then to make as to whether or not they're going to go after it and try to get the money back.
How do these things work out in practice, though? So obviously, it can come as a shock when people come and they understand actually that they are at risk already, because people always come, understandably, after the team move has been organised and is already kind of all the collaboration's happened, and they're coming to you, or the leader's coming to you to get some advice. So firstly, there's the initial shock of the potential risks, but then they go, yes, but come on, what happens in practice? How do these actually play out in practice? And what's your experience of how the range of ways in which they might play out?
So usually playing a big part in this is the business that the team is going to be joining, because naturally they're very keen for this move to be successful, for the individuals to move very smoothly, and for everything to sort of follow on from their clients and so on. Very often we'll find that the new employer will play a big part in this, because most people don't want to end up stuck in litigation, and that goes for the new employer and the old employer. And the reality is that in lots of these cases, commercial deals are done. There'll be naturally arguments around what's happened, whether there have been any breaches of obligations, not just by the people in the team, but also by the new employer, because the new employer could very possibly be on the hook here for things like inducing breaches of contract, or conspiring with the team with the result of losses caused to the old employer. So there is the potential risk in all of this for the new employer as well. What we tend to see is there'll be the threat of litigation. The old employer will be threatening not just the team, but also possibly the new employer. It may well be that all of this can be resolved commercially before any litigation is actually started. That's certainly something we see sort of happening quite a lot. It'll be a question of the the two businesses, if you like, thrashing it out between them, working out commercially what sort of deal they're going to do, and whether that's down to payments based around the amount of business that's being lost from the team moving. The old employer will be talking about the cost it's going to have to be put to in order to recruit a new team, and so on. So all of these things come into play. At some point or other, it is usual to see that some sort of discussion start up between people at a senior level in the two organisations to try and resolve all of this. But this can take quite some time, and we still do see cases where proceedings are launched and injunction applications are sought, and naturally there's a lot of stress in this for the for the individuals who are the ones who as the ones with the primary obligations to the old employer naturally will feel under some sort of threat here, and they will obviously want some support from the new employer in all of this, whether it's indemnities being offered by the new employer to cover the legal fees or to cover any of the liabilities and so on. So all of these discussions come into play. Yeah, it can be quite stressful for all of those involved in it, and I think a lot of people will go into this without realizing, as I say, really what it can all lead to, just assuming that, well, we're fine, we can make our decisions to move, and we're free to do that if we want to. But yeah, we help people through the situation. It's very rare, I'd say, for these things to end up in full-blown litigation, and in most cases they are resolved somewhat amicably, and people will move on and sort of get on with life and get on with business.
So the ones I really like is where you can be a bit more creative in terms of your response. So, for example, maybe a couple of more jurisdictions involved, or ethical rules involved, where the local law may take a completely different view on people leaving, sort of notice that you have to give, whether or not you can come between someone and their clients. And you and I have worked on some of those, involving, let's say, some Central European countries and also another European jurisdiction. And I always think they are fascinating, because you're digging not just into your own jurisdiction and your own regulatory issues, but you're also really looking for kind of interesting arguments, and then issues of how you're actually going to enforce that decision if you get it in one jurisdiction, kind of in another, and they're complicated, but they're really interesting. Well, look, I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for staying to the end if you've made it this far. If you have any questions on team moves or restrictive covenants or confidential information, David loves all of these things, as do we as a firm. Please do get in touch. We've also got some really interesting summaries in our little book. So there is a little book of team moves. So it just gives you a little bit more detail on some of the risks and liabilities and just some things to think about. And on the website, cm-murray.com. So thanks again. I hope you've enjoyed it, and hopefully see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.